I think while if you want people to follow them, but we'll go ahead and get started as far as intro. So for those that are signed up, for those that are going to watch online, thank you for joining us for Building Blocks, Parenting in the 21st Century. To give you guys a backstory on me and how I operate and what I'm about and where I come from, I'm Joshua Slocum, student pastor here at Holiday Hill. I've done youth ministry and also college ministry for about 20 years now. Worked in youth ministry here at Holiday Hill specifically for December will be 14 years I've been here at Holiday Hill. In youth ministry, they say a generation is approximately 7 years. So as a result, I'm rounding out the second generation that I've ministered to here, and the third generation is now on the horizon and now coming up and in. So it's an interesting experience. It's been really fun, and this whole thing got birthed out of basically repetition, especially in the last year or so. I have sat down with a lot of parents and about different things with their kids, And though I say different things with their kids, what I discovered was many of the things that we would say and discuss were getting repeated over and over and over again. Like these certain issues and certain nuances would just keep coming up over and over and over again. And I was sitting with our senior pastor, Pastor Albert, and I was talking about like maybe we should do some kind of parenting class or something, where I can sit with all the parents and we can like discuss this stuff out, we can talk this stuff out. Because I feel like there's some things that just keep coming up over and over and over and over again. And the big three that I've noticed that will delve into the series is communication, discipline, and spiritual leadership. Those are the three big ones. And it's like, well, what does that have to do with my kid dealing with social media? You'd be very well surprised how much it deals with social media. And these are things we're going to be addressing in the weeks to come. So in getting things started, we'll move on to the next one. And what I want you to do is, as we just kind of discuss this out, I want you to take a moment, if you will, reflect on the moment your child or children were born. What humorous events took place? What unexpected things happened? Was there any kind of fear, potential danger? What about? I mean, I know for me, for our first one, the first one was interesting, and that was it was a Wednesday, and I wake up to the sound of my wife saying, "Honey, I think my water broke." She's calling for the bathroom. "I think my water broke." "Are you sure?" "Yeah, I'm pretty sure it did." I'm like looking at the bed. I'm like, "It looks fine. Are you sure?" She's like, "Pull the sheet back." I pull the sheet back. Oh my gosh! Yeah, like I'm freaking out. The hospital we were at was on the other side of town. It's early. It's relatively early in the morning, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. Throw her in the car. I'm like gunning it. And again, she was, that day was not the day she was supposed to have a kid. So some parents like prepare like a bag and have things ready. We had nothing ready. We had nothing ready at all. It's like, let's go. And we're like going, and we get there, and I mean, some people, I guess some ladies talk about how they go through labor and like, I was in labor for 20 hours. She wasn't in labor for long at all. And he was born. And there were two things that were kind of interesting about his moment that I think are just kind of nice. And my oldest son, his name's Noah. And he weighed in at 6 pounds, 14 ounces. Genesis 6:14 is when God commands Noah to build the ark. And on the moment he was born, there was a small rainstorm that just happened. And as a result, there was a rainbow outside our window the day he was born.
Aww,
so that was kind of cool. Like, it's Noah at 6:14, and, there's a rainbow outside the window. Our daughter was similar but different. We had scheduled that she was going to be induced. So we were planning on heading to the hospital that morning. And then she decided she wasn't going to play by anyone's terms. She was going to come out because she decided to come out. So my wife started going into labor early that morning before we were going to go to the hospital anyway. So wife went into labor, baby girl was born. The one that really stuck out for me was she comes out, Doc's holding her up. And I mean, she's tiny. She's always been tiny. She's always been little. She's always been very petite. And she comes out, she's like bowed up. She has both fists clenched tight. She's like, she's all clenched, and she's just screaming at the world. And the first words I heard, Doc told her, goes, "Wow, she's a feisty one."
Hasn't changed much since.
Yep, that hasn't changed at all. So the next question I got for us for today is, after said birth or births, what feelings, or what were the feelings you experienced? Were you overwhelmed? Were you relieved? Were you stressed? The other thing I mentioned was, did you get what your parents tried to communicate to you so long ago. Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but did you ever have parents that said something along the lines of like, you know, once you have kids of your own, you'll understand. Or, you know, I hope your children are just like you so you'll understand what came down, you know, blah, blah. I had a friend who had 2 boys, and when her first boy was born, and she said when the doctor handed me my son, she's like, at that moment, she said, Josh, I got it. Like, what my mom tried to communicate about motherhood, about parenthood, like, in that moment for her, she's like, I got it. I understood, like, this concept of love. I've had siblings in my youth department, like, all together in the same department, and sometimes we'll talk about the favorite child, and it's kind of funny when you have the siblings up there talking about which one in the dynamic is the favorite. I don't know what's funnier, when there's a discrepancy, like, he's the favorite. No, they're the favorite. This one's the favorite. Or there is a consensus amongst, like, 2 to 3 of, like, oh, yeah, that one's definitely the favorite. Yeah, I am the favorite. I don't know which one's funnier, but they are. But both scenarios are pretty funny when we talk about who the favorite is amongst teenagers.
I always tell my kids I have 5 favorites.
I had a guy who would say with his grandkids, you know, it was his first one was like the bravest, the prettiest and smartest girl in the whole wide world. Well, then he had 2 granddaughters, so he's like, my first granddaughter is the prettiest and smartest daughter south of the North Pole, and my second granddaughter is the prettiest and smartest granddaughter north of the South Pole. Like, he was hitting like the prime meridian, the international date line, the Tropic of Capricorn. He was hitting all of them, both over and under, for each one they would have.
I tell mine that they're both my favorites. You're my favorite boy and you're my favorite girl.
In these moments, where did the parenting process start? In other words, like, for some people, like, they like hit them baby books, like they bought baby books, they went to websites, they watched YouTube videos, like they started like early in. So was it before they were born? Was it after they were born? Did you talk to a fellow parent, whether it was your own mom or dad or a grandparent or maybe a friend who's already had kids? Or was it something you just dreamed about or theorized? Especially like for the ladies, like you have baby dolls when you're little. But you know, the baby doll and the baby, there's certainly differences, because if I drop the baby doll, again, no one really freaks out over that. But if you drop the real baby, that's frowned upon. So, but for you guys, when did the parenting process start? Our first was a pleasant surprise. Like, we got married. Our plan was like, we're going to be married for a year, and after a year, we'll talk about having kids. Well, after 1 year of marriage, we already had a kid. Like, our 1 year anniversary, we have an infant with us in tow at that point.
We got married, and 11 months later had a baby.
Yeah.
No, 10 months later had a baby.
Yeah, and when we got married, we got a house that's perfect for a married couple. It was big enough for 2 people. It was perfect for 2 people. For 3 people, it worked. I mean, it was workable. For 4 people, it would have been outright impossible. But we're in a home that, to be fair, it's wonderful, and we're grateful for it. But for a third, it made things very quaint. We'll put it that way. It was quaint, and because of the quaintness of it all, for the first one, I don't think we ever baby-proofed anything, because there wasn't really much the baby could get into that was out of our line of vision from the way the house was designed. So, and there wasn't a whole lot of space for them to traverse around to get into things. Is it just me, or does it seem like when it comes to like kids, especially small children, it always seems to be that like the things they should eat, they don't, and the things they shouldn't be eating are the things they want to put in their mouths and eat. Like, why? Like, here's a chicken nugget. No, I don't want a chicken nugget. Here's a cockroach. Ooh, that looks tasty. And like, what? No, the chicken. Here's macaroni and cheese. I don't want macaroni and cheese. Here's an electrical socket. What's that taste like? You're like, no, don't lick the electrical socket. That's bad. But back to the question, though, with the parenting process, like you mentioned 8 months, not really sure when it began, like somewhere between, here you go, Dad, and 8 months, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did anyone, like, do any what I call pregame? Did you talk to anyone about it? Did you call mom and dad up? Did you call a grandparent up? Did you read a book or watch something online or anything like that at all? Anything like that? So take a moment to take kind of inventory of the situation we have found ourselves in when it comes to parenting. We're in the hospital, baby's born. Congratulations, Mom. Congratulations, Dad. You're now a mom and a dad. And, you know, again, these adventures in parenting already started in the process of birthing, like getting to the hospital, all the crazy that happens involved in that. and we're now holding this little being that looks either like us or like mom or a mix of my mom and dad or grandparents, things like that. That's always a fun thing. Like, they're like, oh, it has granddad's nose, or it has Uncle Jimmy's blah, 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 blah. People, oh, I know that face. That face is what granddad makes before he, eats his baked beans, whatever. Like, stuff like that all the time. But you have this being in your hands, and I've told many youth parents this before, and it's something I don't think we truly appreciate, but I firmly believe it happens. In the moments that we hold that kid, the following thing, whether we realize it or not, takes place. Oh my gosh, I have no idea what I'm doing. Oh my gosh, how am I going to, especially if if you're one of those houseplant or pet people that could never, keep something alive, how am I going to keep this thing alive? How am I not going to screw this thing up? How am I not going to screw this being up with all my drama and all my whatever? How am I not going to do all that? And how am I going to be successful in this? And then the next thing that usually happens is we then take an inventory of the process that got us there. And that process is what our moms and dads or grandparents or parental figures did in our life. What did they do? And usually, and again, this happens in a matter of seconds. Like, mom and dad did this, or if you were raised by grandparents, grandpa and grandma would do this, or if you had a close family friend, or close friends and their parents kind of raised you kind of thing. Jimmy's parents would always do this with me, that kind of thing. You have this in your mind, they did this, and you know what? I mean, I'm here, and I'm out of jail, and I guess I turned out okay enough. So naturally, I guess what they did wasn't so terrible. So I guess I'll go and do exactly what they did, or try to do what they did. And this is those moments that you get where, typical what we call parental tropes. And when I say those moments of oh my God, I turned into my mom, I turned into my dad. I can't believe I just said that. I mean, typical parent tropes. What are a few of the parent tropes we've heard before? Or we admit to what we've said before? Any of them?
Just wait till your father gets home.
Wait till your father gets home. How about don't you cry, I'll give you something to cry about. Clean your room. I don't want to clean my room. I didn't ask if you wanted to clean your room. I said, go clean your room. There's a lot of truth to this, that what happens is, again, we take that inventory, this moment of, we instantly, whether we realize it or not, a lot of our parenting comes off what was taught to us. Which leads to the next question. How did your parents parent you? Did they do a great job? Did they do an okay/passable job? Or did they do a less than stellar job? Now, we are recording, but we are going to edit this out. So if in the event that your parents are alive and well and they ever stumble upon this, they aren't going to hear your answer. But if they do watch, what did you answer with? You lie and say that they were great. So that being said, what parental experiences with your own moms and dads? Honest assessment, were they great? Were they all right? Or were they somewhere less than that? What do we got? Out of curiosity, where'd you guys fall in the birth orders? Because I've noticed sometimes our experience with our parents can sometimes be relation to the birth order. The eldest, as they jokingly say, gets a lot of the attention, gets a lot of the focus. Many a times in a family dynamic, the eldest is like the standard bearer, if you will. So they're your honor roll student. They tend to be your more responsible one in the sense of family dynamics, because sometimes the oldest can serve as a substitute parent in certain situations when mom and dad are away. As a result, and again, not all the time, but sometimes the oldest can sometimes, as a result, be the more, you could say the more responsible one. I'd say, or maybe they would say the more bossy one, the one who kind of takes charge, takes control. Younger siblings, that kind of thing. Younger ones tend to, and again, as the joke goes, the parents have put all this time and effort into the oldest ones, so the youngest one's we're tired. They just kind of mail it in, if you will, and as a result, the babies kind of get away with everything. And it's really funny. It's well, what are you doing about this one? Oh, well, he's the baby. He's 15. He's the baby. He doesn't know better. He's 15. So I know sometimes the birthing order can sometimes play a role in our assessment of the parenting dynamic. But that being said, continue to take assessment. How about this one? What did your parents do with you or to you that was really good, and what made it good? So we're looking at, parents did a good job. What were some things they did that was really good, and what made it good? What are some standout good memories? And not just memories, but practices. Things that you noticed in their parenting procedures that they did, okay, this was actually really solid, this was really good. We mentioned trips, and I notice when it comes to like trips, like especially like family vacations, things like that. I think there's a cool truth there. That is, I think, a very good thing, and that is the importance of making memories. You want to make those memories with them. Whether, and again, you know, maybe that is going to Disney World, regardless of how much it is. But maybe that's going to a local park and maybe playing a game of catch, or maybe having a family outing or some kind, or making big deals about birthdays, especially those big round number birthdays like 15, 16, 18, you know, 10, you know, the big numbers, if you will. There's something that's said about, you know, parents who make memories and want to make memories and want to make like lasting good memories with their kids. I think that's a very good thing. What are some other good things that our parents did that were really good, and what made them good? There's a lot to be said, and you know, the statistics back this up, the importance of having that family dinner, sitting around the dinner table, and especially in the 21st century world, turning those cell phones off, get them away from the table. We're going to sit here as a family for a good 20, 30 minutes and talk and communicate. How was your day? How was school? How was work? What do we game planning? What do we have on the horizon? What's going down tomorrow? What's going to happen Saturday? How do you feel? Is there anything I can get for you? You know, things like that. That moment where you have like a timeout and basically like almost like a family huddle, and like the dinner table is a wonderful, wonderful excuse essentially to make that family huddle kind of happen. Like, let's get together, let's orchestrate, let's communicate, and let's make this important. And so establishing that family itself is important. Some people, they're like what I call the family type people. Like they're this close-knit bunch. They're all in each other's business, you know. And as a result, when they get older, they're the ones that have the group chats right now. They're the ones who have like the big, huge Thanksgivings. Yeah, like, I'm doing premarital with a group right now. I'm doing premarital with a group right now.
He's totally calling me out right now.
No, I'm doing premarital, and the groom right now, he's like, I got like 3 group chats right now with different family members, like with siblings and cousins, and yeah, I mean, but I think a great foundational thing for that is setting those family dinners, making sure those family dinners are important. Now, again, we're listing these things that are good, like, you know, again, the importance of sports, the importance of like getting off your tail and being active and and not just like from a physical aspect, but also the social aspect. Knowing how to communicate with people, knowing how to work with people, because that's part of the life process. You have to go to the office building. You have to deal with other people. You have to collaborate with people. You sometimes have to boss around people. You sometimes have to correct people. And knowing how to do that in healthy manners. That's certainly something that happens. And back to this idea of like parenting, we go off what our parents did. So, I mean, I imagine these things we're listing off, many of these things are probably things that we're instilling in the lives of our kids right now, correct? So, here's the next one. Were there things they did with you that should be deleted out of the repertoire entirely, or the things that we run the risk of repeating in the next generation? Things that they did that maybe can fall in the improved category, but maybe even less than that. Like there are things they did like we definitely shouldn't do kind of thing. And it sounds like what our experiences that are here in the room, it sounds like our experiences with mom and dad were good, which is great. That's wonderful. I've had experiences with parents where their parenting, their growing up experiences, them being the child being reared experience was not good at all. Of course, the big ones we talk about, of course, are abusive, whether that's verbal, physical, or sexual. And the statistics are clear. Those who are abusive in those arenas, chances are they were abused the same way when they were young. In church life, we call this the generational curse, if you will. And that is what we see growing up, and it comes back to what we're talking about. What we see growing up, we often will repeat. The tragedy is sometimes the things that we repeat, we shouldn't be repeating. And we don't think to not repeat them because we haven't taken the moment to take an inventory of our experience in our life. Like, here's what mom and dad did that was really good. Here are things that they did that, and again, it wasn't that they're terrible people. Not in the case, that's not always the case. You know, it was not that they were terrible people. They had what they had, they got what they got, and again, they're in the same boat. That when we were handed it in their arms, they probably did the same thing we did. And that is, I guess I turned out semi-okay. I'm not in jail, so I guess I'll do what I did before. That's the logic behind the generational curse. We repeat the things over and over and over again. And sometimes the things mom and dad did were downright destructive. For some people, it was definitely like that. And again, the abusive cases, it's like that. But maybe it's not abusive. Maybe it's the fact that they had a short attention span. They had a short patience, or they had a short fuse, so they were prone to anger. And they would explode on said child. And so when we were young, mom and dad exploded on us with stuff. And if we're not careful, again, because we're now running the same playbook they ran, or at least in our mind how they ran it, we can sometimes run the risk that we explode on them. And again, what does a 2-year-old know about anything? But we explode on them sometimes. Sometimes that can happen. there are things that maybe our parents did that were not the greatest and the best. And as a result, if we're not careful, we don't take a moment to truly assess, okay, what did they do? And not just what did they do, courtesy of what they did, I'm doing it now, or I run the risk of doing it now. And for us, it's funny how people define the word normal, because normal is what we always saw. But sometimes that may not be normal. And again, sometimes in some family dynamics, we think something's normal and it's not. And wonderful cheeky example of this is New Year's Day, after I married my wife. On New Year's Day, my wife's family gets together and they put dimes in their black eyed peas. Literal metal dimes in the black eyed peas. And you're supposed to fish them out with a spoon and find your dime. And it's supposed to mean you get good luck for the rest. You're supposed to keep it. And you're supposed to keep it for the rest of the year. Like hold on to it kind of thing.
You can't spend it.
In her, exactly. And in her family, that's the point. In her family, that is 110% normal. Why wouldn't you do that? But again, for them, that's not weird. That's not out of the ordinary. That's 100% normal. Except for everyone who's not in her family. You're like, what in the world? Why would you?
I legit thought everybody did that on New Year's Day.
Yeah, everyone does that.
Until I was like well into my teens.
But then imagine someone from that family dynamic going to some other New Year's dinner is like, where's the dimes? Again, because that's how we define normal. This is the point I'm trying to make here with our parents and how we parent as a result. Sometimes what we define as normal parenting may or may not be so normal, but we don't realize that because it was normal for us. And we have to take a moment and say, okay, what did they do that was really good? What did they do that could be improved upon? And also, what are some things they did that I don't need to repeat? There's maybe anger issues that we don't need to repeat. There's maybe patience issues that we need to work upon. There may be conflict resolution situations we need to move upon. Because it may not be how we treat them. It may be how we treat others, because that's how mom and dad treated others. But the reality is, they taught us that way, and if we're not careful, we'll teach them that way too. How do mom and dad handle drama? How do mom and dad argue, or not just argue, but resolve conflict? Chances are we got those skills from our own moms and dads. They taught us those things. Was it good? Could it be improved upon? Or are there things that we say, okay, I need to pull this off the table because clearly I'm having to deal with this. It's what raised me, and it's not necessarily it's terrible, and it's not that mom and dad were awful. But the reality is no one's perfect. I'm not perfect, y'all aren't perfect, our parents aren't perfect, and our kids aren't going to be perfect either. But for their sake, I don't need to instill that in their life. Now, for where we're at, as far as like the parenting process is, we got young, middle, and grown up at this point. And the question may be like, okay, that's great stuff, Josh, but what do we do with it now? How do we handle this? How do we deal with this? What do we do with the time we have left? I would say consider that as an encouragement, regardless of how much time you think you have left with your kid, whether they're 20, 30, whether they're 13, whether they're 9, whether they're 4, whatever the case may be. Consider the moment, the picture that Josh was sharing there, and that is you have only so much time. But time is irrelevant. It's what are we doing with the time we have left? And in his case, someone could turn his life around with only 23 weeks left to go. Just a matter of 23 some odd weeks could turn that around for the positive. But the question is, okay, how are we going to turn it around? For how much time we have left with our kids, how are we going to do this? And I got a handout for you to take with you home, and you can talk with family and whatnot if you need to. But basically the assignment's going to be this. Write down basic accomplishments you wish to have for your kids by the time they turn 20. What accomplishments do you want them to have by age 20? And here are a few examples. Education. Do you want to graduate high school? Do you want to be in college? Do you want to be in a trade school? Do you want them to not be a college dropout? Manners. Do you want them to know how to talk to people? How to interact? On a side note, with this current generation, I will say this. Interpersonal communication, which comes back to the next one, communication skills. Those two, manners and communication skills, are at all-time lows. And part of it is because their world, yeah, exactly. Their world is this. And because their world is this, they don't know much about the world out here. They don't. But we're mom and we are dad. We are the parents here. What are things that you want them to have accomplished by 20? Is communication skills one of them? Anger management. Anger management. Do we want them to know how to properly process their anger? Financial discipline. Do we want them to not have $20,000 in debt by the time they turn 22? Not including the student loans? Do we want that for them? Disappointment navigation. Do we want them to have a handle on what happens when they deal with breakups, when they don't get the job, when they don't make the team, when someone breaks up with them, or maybe the school they dreamed of says sorry, but thanks, but no thanks. Do we want them to know how to deal with disappointment and navigate that? Are those things that we want for them, that we want them to be able to have unlocked by the age of 20? Those are just a few examples. Maybe there's plenty more that you could write down. But as you write these things down for your assignment for the week, write down how you, as mom and dad, will guide them to those successes. Okay, I want them, for example, I want them to know about that, deal with anger management. Okay, mom and dad, how am I, as mom or dad, going to help them in that journey for the time I have left? Maybe it's, I need to be aware of my own anger, and if I want them to deal with anger in a healthy manner, that means I have to deal with anger in a healthy manner. Maybe when I'm angry, I need to pull them aside with me, and walk with them and show them the process of how to healthily deal with this issue. Maybe it is financial management. And maybe, again, this is a crazy one, but I think it's an underrated one. If they're 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, now's the time to pull them aside and show them the family budget. How to pay a bill. I do a junior senior retreat every other year on the odd years. On the odd years, I do a junior senior retreat. Every year at our junior senior retreat, we have to cover how to pay a bill. 16, 17, 18-year-olds do not know how to make a house payment, do not know how to make a car payment, do not know how to pay for insurance, do not know how to pay for their cell phone. They have no idea. And I'm not hating, but it's just those things we take for granted. But it's like, if we want them to know this by 20, if we don't teach them, who is? Well, clearly on that one, the youth pastor does a junior senior retreat. But other than that, I mean, who teaches them those things? Is financial management something we want to teach them? Do we want to, again, emphasize education? How do I, as mom and dad, emphasize the importance of education? So what I want you to do as we conclude out for this week and head into next week is start setting goals. As mom and dad, for whatever how much time you have left in the life, in the span of you being mom and dad of the household, of their world, what do I want them to know? What do I want them to gain? What do I want them to say about me in about 10 to 15 years if they're sitting in a class like this and they say, what are those good things that mom and dad instilled in my life? What were those things? And they can say, mom and dad taught me about anger management. Mom and dad taught me about the financial management. They sat me down and taught me how to do bills. They taught me how to save money. They taught me how to be polite. They made me order my food at the restaurant so I know how to talk to strangers in a polite manner. I can't tell you how many teenagers I have right now who have their moms and dads to order for them at the restaurant. I've had teenagers at junior senior retreats who did not know how to cook, who did not know how to do laundry, who did not know how to fold clothes, who did not know how to wash dishes. What do we want them to know by age 20? And how are we going to get them there? And this is the introduction. Next week, we will talk about communication. The communication skills or communication nuances of Millennial and Gen Z are very unique. And I have way too much experience in both. So many of our kids are Generation Z or Millennial and or Millennial. So we'll be talking about that next week and getting to what you call the meat and potatoes of it. But again, your homework assignment as we close out tonight is set down your goals. Sometimes we don't know what to do because we don't know where we're going. Let's figure out where we're going first. Where do we want to get them? Once we have that destination, we can then create a roadmap of how we're going to get them there and start brainstorming some ideas. So I'm going to pray for us, and then we will head out. So let's pray. Dear Jesus, Lord, thank you so much, and thank you so much for moms and dads. Mom and dads who are taking the time to make the commitment to want to be better, want to improve the life of their kids, and see them succeed in so many different avenues. And Lord, whatever these challenges are that arise, may we be courageous, may we be wise, and may we be honest in assessing what we have to do to get them to wherever we need to get them to. Be with us now, be with us throughout the rest of the week. May you continue to bless us. We ask all these things in Christ's name. Amen.